The morning after their wedding, Diep woke to a silence so gentle it felt like the world itself was holding its breath for them. Sunlight slid through the thin curtains, tracing soft gold across the room where she and James had finally begun their life as husband and wife. For the first time in a long time, Diep felt safe, truly safe, like every storm she had walked through had led her to this moment. James was already awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, watching her with that familiar tenderness that always made her chest tighten. "Good morning, Mrs. James," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Diep laughed, a small, shy sound she couldn't hide. "It feels strange hearing that." "It feels perfect," James replied, and leaned down to kiss her forehead. They spent the first few days of marriage in a peaceful rhythm, cooking simple meals together, fixing small things around the house, visiting their new office to prepare for the company's reopening. Everything felt new, hopeful, full of promise. But Diep, she felt different. At first, it was only tiny things. She would feel dizzy when she bent down to pick something up. She started craving sour food in the middle of the afternoon. Some nights, her stomach fluttered strangely, like a tiny heartbeat echoing inside her. James noticed. "You're tired a lot lately," he said one evening as she leaned against him on the sofa. "Are you getting sick?" Diep shook her head, though she wasn't sure. "Maybe I just need rest." But deep inside, a quiet suspicion began to bloom, soft but insistent. The next morning, while James was preparing breakfast, she slipped out to the small pharmacy near their home. Her hand shook as she paid for a single pregnancy test, hiding it in her bag before anyone could see. When she returned home, she locked the bathroom door behind her. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought James might hear it through the walls. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the test revealed its result. 2 clear lines. Diep pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, tears filling her eyes. A baby! Their baby! A piece of her and James growing quietly inside her. Joy burst inside her chest like sunlight breaking through clouds. But at that same moment, in the kitchen outside, James's phone began to ring. A call from the company. A call that would soon pull him into the darkest trouble he had ever faced.
The morning after the stormy confrontation, Diep woke up feeling strangely heavy, as though the world itself had shifted beneath her feet. James had left early, leaving only a note on the table. "I'll fix this before it reaches you. Trust me." His handwriting was steady, confident. Too confident for a man cornered from every direction. She pressed the note to her chest. Something inside her felt unsettled, almost fluttering, and at first she thought it was anxiety. But as she stood, a wave of dizziness washed over her. She grabbed the edge of the table, breathing slowly until the room stopped spinning. She should have told him. She should have said something last night when she sensed her body changing, when that tiny suspicion scratched at the back of her mind. But James already carried the weight of whole worlds. She hadn't wanted to add another burden. Outside, wind rattled the bamboo fence, while villagers whispered as she walked by. People stared with a strange mix of curiosity, concern, and the quiet judgment they always reserved for young brides married into powerful families. At the small clinic near the market, the doctor smiled kindly after examining her. "Congratulations," he said softly. "You are pregnant." The world froze. Pregnant. The word hit her like sunlight after rain. Her hands shook as she held the ultrasound paper, just a tiny shadow inside her, a life barely formed, but hers, theirs. Her eyes filled instantly, tears rolling down her cheeks in confused joy and fear. She stepped out into the warm air, the scent of ripe mangoes drifting from the vendor stalls. She wanted to call James immediately, to scream the news into the phone, to hear him laugh the way he always did when happiness blindsided him. But then she remembered what the workers had shouted the night before, the fear in her mother's voice, the coldness in the eyes of the officers who had come asking questions. James wasn't free. James wasn't safe. And this child, this delicate, precious secret, was arriving at the worst possible moment. She walked slowly through the market, trying to steady her thoughts. Every sound was louder than usual. The clatter of baskets, the shout of vendors, the rustle of leaves as wind swept through the stalls. But beneath the noise, her mind whispered one truth again and again. I have to protect him. I have to protect our child. Just as she was about to head home, a shadow stepped into her path. Min. He wore a simple white shirt and carried a guitar case on his back. Still the same calm, gentle man who once played music on the street, yet now the CEO of an expanding construction empire. His eyes softened when he saw her. "You look pale," he said quietly. "Are you all right?" She forced a smile. "Just tired." Min studied her for a moment. He wasn't foolish. He sensed something was wrong. "James is in trouble," he said finally. "Everyone in the business circle knows it. The stock plunge, the investigation, the accusations. Diep, you don't have to face this alone." The concern in his voice was real, too real. It made her heart twist, not because she wanted him, but because she understood the dangerous sincerity of a man who once walked away from power and returned only for her. She took a step back. "I am his wife," she said softly. "Whatever he faces, I face with him." A flicker of pain crossed Min's eyes, but he nodded. "Then at least let me help you." "No," she whispered. "If James knew, it would hurt him more." Before he could say another word, a black car screeched into the street, halting sharply. Two men stepped out, stern, tense. "Mrs. James, we need you to come with us. It concerns your husband." Her blood turned cold. Men instinctively moved closer, defensive. "Who sent you?" The men exchanged a glance. "The investigation team." Her hand trembled as she folded the ultrasound paper and hid it inside her sleeve. Her heart pounded painfully against her ribs. Pregnant or not, terrified or not, she had no choice. James needed her. And as the men opened the car door, Diep stepped inside, knowing this was only the beginning. The car ride felt endless, every turn swallowing deeper into uncertainty. The men said nothing, their faces fixed in hard lines that revealed neither hostility nor reassurance. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, still barely accepting the truth inside her. The child was only a whisper of life, yet she felt fiercely protective already. When the car finally stopped in front of a gray administrative building, her breath caught. Reporters were gathered at the entrance, cameras flashing like lightning as they shouted questions she could not fully hear. The men guided her through a side door before the crowd could swarm, but she could still catch fragments of chaos. Is it true James falsified financial statements? Does he plan to flee the country? Is the hydropower fund connected to criminal activity? Her heart squeezed painfully. James would never do that. Someone set him up. Someone powerful. Inside, the hallways were cold and quiet. They led her to a plain room where a single officer sat behind a wooden desk. His expression was calmer than she expected, almost sympathetic. "Mrs. James," he said, adjusting his glasses, "we need to ask a few questions. Your husband was brought in last night." Her breath stopped. "Is he hurt? Can I see him?" "In time. For now, we need your cooperation." The officer slid a file across the table. Inside were documents, investment records, withdrawal transactions, screenshots of messages. Her eyes scanned the highlighted lines. Every number seemed to pulse with accusation. At the very top, in bold red ink, was the name of the man responsible for pulling the investment, John. Diep's fingers tightened around the paper. She remembered John's restless eyes, the strange bitterness he carried whenever James's name came up. She remembered the day James told her that some people smile only when planning destruction. "Mrs. James," the officer continued, "do you know anything about your husband's meeting with John before the hydropower funds collapsed?" She shook her head. "James told me John was acting strangely, but he never said anything about meetings. Did James mention any threats?" Her mind flashed back to the nights when James came home late, exhausted, brushing off her questions with a forced smile. The mysterious phone calls, the business rivals appearing from nowhere, the workers who suddenly turned against him. She swallowed hard. Someone was following him. He didn't tell me who, but I could feel he was hiding something to protect me. The officer closed the file gently, nodding as though he already suspected as much. "Your husband is not under arrest. Not yet. But the investigation will continue. Not under arrest. Not yet." The words felt like sharp stones beneath her feet. "Can I see him?" she whispered again, her voice cracking. The officer hesitated only a moment before signaling to a guard. 5 minutes. They led her down a dim hallway, each step echoing with tension. At the end was a narrow room with a single glass window, and behind it, sitting alone, was James. His hair was slightly disheveled, his eyes shadowed with sleeplessness, but the moment he saw her, warmth broke through the exhaustion. He stood quickly, pressing a hand against the glass. "Diep, why did they bring you here?" She moved closer, placing her palm against his. "I had to see you. You shouldn't be dragged into this. It's too dangerous." She shook her head. "I'm your wife. There is no dangerous alone." For a moment the world felt suspended, just the two of them, separated only by a sheet of glass, yet closer than ever. She wanted to tell him about the baby, about the tiny miracle growing inside her, but the words caught in her throat as she took in the tension etched into his face. Not here. Not while he was drowning. "James," she whispered, "I know John is behind all of this." His jaw tightened. "There's more. Much more." Before he could continue, the guard tapped the door. Time was up. Panic rushed through her. She pressed her hand harder against the glass. "I'm not leaving you, no matter what happens." His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for her. "Diep, trust me. When this ends, I will protect both of you." Both. Her heart slammed painfully. Did he know? Had he sensed it? But before she could speak, the guards were already pulling her away. James's eyes never left hers, filled with a desperation that tore her apart. Outside the interrogation hall, the air felt colder than before. Rain had begun to fall, tapping against the windows in restless, frantic rhythms. Diep wrapped her arms around herself. She was carrying his child, and James was being dragged into a storm that could destroy him. As she stepped out into the wet afternoon, she didn't notice the black umbrella already waiting for her, held by men who had followed her the entire time. "Diep," he said quietly, eyes full of worry, "whatever happens next, you can't face this alone." She looked up at him, rain clinging to her lashes, her heart trembling with a truth she could no longer hide. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, and Min froze, shocked, breathless, and suddenly terrified for her in a way he never had been before.